Welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story that is dramatic, satisfying, and deeply inspiring. The journey of a Black woman CEO who was mocked and humiliated simply because of her accent. People laughed at her, ridiculed her, and believed she would never succeed in the cutthroat world of business. But what they didn't know is that she would turn the tables and close a $2 billion deal, leaving everyone in stunned silence. Across 8 chapters filled with twists, you'll witness her path from humiliation to triumph, intense boardroom showdowns, and moments where she nearly broke, only to rise stronger than ever. This isn't just a story about a billion-dollar deal. It's a declaration that pain can become power, and disrespect can fuel greatness. Stay with us until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you won't miss any of our next dramatic stories. It was a misty morning in New York, the glass towers glittering under the first light of day. Inside a vast conference room, dozens of eyes were fixed on a woman, standing tall, hair neatly tied back, gaze razor-sharp. She was Alicia Johnson, a Black woman CEO who had just taken the helm of a tech company desperate for investment. But the moment Alicia opened her mouth to begin her pitch, a ripple of laughter broke out in the corner of the room. A few wealthy investors, silver-haired and flashing gold watches, exchanged smirks before mocking her southern accent. "Sounds like she's telling a joke," one man muttered loudly enough for the whole table to hear. A chorus of snickers followed. Alicia heard every word. For a split second, it felt like her chest was caving in, her palms damp with sweat. She could have lashed out or stormed out to salvage her pride. Instead, she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked closer to the screen. With a steady, unwavering tone, she declared, "You can laugh at my accent, but numbers don't lie. Let me show you what this company has achieved." The room grew still. Behind the mockery, curiosity began to stir. And that moment marked the beginning of a journey no one in that room could have ever imagined. A chart appeared on the massive screen, its glow reflecting off Alicia's calm face. She no longer cared about the dismissive stares. Her voice rang out stronger now, firm, deliberate, and unshaken. "In just 18 months, our revenue has grown by 300%. Our new technology product now has over 5 million active users. And here," Alicia pointed to a number enlarged on the screen, "is our projected growth for the next 2 years. Silence fell over the room. Faces that had been smirking a moment ago now turned serious, eyes scanning the figures intently. One notoriously tough investor crossed his arms and gave a small, approving nod. But not everyone was ready to concede. A man in a sharp navy suit, arrogant in his posture, sneered, "Anyone can throw numbers on a screen. The real question is, can your company actually compete on the global stage, or is this just a local American play?" The whole room leaned in, waiting for Alicia's response. It wasn't just a question. It was a challenge, a trap laid right in the middle of an already hostile arena. Alicia smiled faintly. Without the slightest hesitation, she replied, "You're right. Anyone can put numbers on a slide. But only real-world results prove value. And we're prepared to prove it." Her eyes glimmered, not with the look of someone defending, but of a warrior ready to strike. The atmosphere in the boardroom began to shift. What started as mockery was now turning into curiosity and caution. Alicia sensed she was gaining control. She walked slowly along the table, locking eyes with each investor, her voice echoing with authority. "We've already signed distribution deals with 3 major European tech corporations. Our product has been piloted in Germany, France, and the UK. And in the last quarter, 40% of our revenue came from international markets." A ripple spread through the room. The man who had challenged her earlier frowned, while other investors exchanged astonished glances. A blonde woman in the front row leaned forward, scribbling notes furiously. Alicia pressed on, her voice growing more commanding with each word. "You may doubt my accent. You may mock the way I speak. But when you look at these results, you will have no choice but to respect me." Her words sliced through the air like a blade. Silence followed, heavy and undeniable. In more than a few eyes, the initial contempt had already transformed into something else. Hesitation, and the reluctant beginnings of respect. Alicia knew the battle had only just begun. But she had landed her first strike, and it had hit them right in their pride. The tension in the boardroom reached its peak. Some investors shifted in their seats, leaning closer to Alicia as if afraid to miss a word. Yet, cold, skeptical eyes still lingered, waiting for her to slip. Then suddenly, one of the oldest investors, an infamous financial mogul known for crushing dozens of startups, spoke up. "Ms. Johnson, if everything you're saying is true, then why haven't we heard more about your company? Why hasn't the press hailed it as a phenomenon?" The question was another blade, cutting into the silence. Alicia lifted her chin, eyes blazing. "Because I don't chase the spotlight. I don't need the media to create value. I need results, and real results can't be hidden." She paused, locking eyes with him, then smiled. "You want proof? Then join me in this deal. After today, the press won't just talk about my company. They'll talk about the ones who believed in it first." The room stirred. A few scattered claps broke out, hesitant at first, then growing stronger. Some investors nodded, scribbling notes in haste. And while a few still clung to their skepticism, it was undeniable. Alicia had turned the tables. From the one being mocked, she had become the one holding the power. The first chapter closed, but at that very moment, the seeds of a billion-dollar deal had been planted. After that stormy pitch meeting, Alicia returned to her office on the 42nd floor. Through the glass windows, New York glowed beneath her like a sleepless maze. She stood still, clutching the folder in her hands. Though she had stayed composed in front of the investors, inside, anger burned fiercely. She replayed every mocking laugh, every smirk of disdain. "Do they really think my accent makes me worth less?" she thought, eyes blazing. But then she inhaled deeply, reminding herself, anger doesn't win battles, action does. Just then, the door swung open. Marcus, the CFO and Alicia's most loyal ally, stepped in, dropping a thick stack of reports onto her desk. "We need to prepare more. Some investors may be wavering, but there will be even tougher questions in the next round." Alicia nodded slightly and sat at her desk. Her eyes no longer carried just anger, but a steely determination. "Then we'll show them. Not just with words, but with strategy, with data, with undeniable results. I swear I'll turn their mockery into fuel to close that deal." Outside, New York's lights still blazed, as if daring her. But to Alicia, it was no longer a dare. It was an invitation. Prove yourself. Marcus spread the reports across the desk, his voice low and steady. "Here's the list of major investors for the next round. They won't just look at numbers. They'll dig into every detail, every contract, every potential risk." Alicia flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the familiar names. Each one was notorious, investors who had made countless CEOs sweat under pressure. Yet instead of fear, a sharp smile tugged at the corner of her lips. The tougher, the better. I don't want them to just believe in the numbers. I want them to be stunned by how we operate. Marcus nodded, then pointed to a chart. "We need an airtight strategy. I'll handle the financials, but Alicia, they'll come for you personally. Your accent, your background, anything they think is a weakness." Alicia lifted her head, her gaze burning like fire. "Then I'll turn weakness into a weapon. If they want to hear my voice, I'll let it ring until they have no choice but to be silent. I don't need to hide who I am. I just need to prove I belong." The room fell silent. Outside, neon lights spilled through the glass, casting Alicia's reflection. No longer just a CEO, but a warrior on the edge of battle. For hours, the lights in Alicia's office stayed on. The desk was covered in papers, charts, laptops glowing. It looked less like an office and more like a battlefield of data. Marcus pored over the financial sheets while Alicia sharpened the presentation strategy. "We can't just talk about the product," Alicia said, her tone cutting. "We have to tell a story they can't escape. From the first word to the last, I want them hooked." Marcus gave a weary smile. "So basically, I need to turn these dry numbers into weapons." Alicia nodded, her eyes glinting with resolve. "Exactly. I'll speak the language of the heart. You'll speak the language of numbers. And when those two merge, no one will be able to deny us." They split the work. Alicia crafted narratives of real-world success from international clients, while Marcus built a financial model so precise it left no room for doubt. Hour by hour, the pressure mounted, but neither of them faltered. Near midnight, Alicia leaned back in her chair, staring at the now polished strategy laid out before her. What she felt wasn't fear, it was a strange, thrilling anticipation. "Let's see if they still dare to laugh at my voice," she whispered. The next morning, before dawn had even broken, Alicia's office lights were already on. She appeared in a crisp white suit, hair neatly pinned, radiating both composure and authority. Marcus handed her a strong cup of black coffee, his voice steady with resolve. "This won't just be a pitch. This will be a battle, and we're not going to lose." Alicia took a sip, then smiled. "No, Marcus. This will be our opening victory." On the big screen, the final slides glowed. International growth charts, client testimonials, a financial roadmap with every figure airtight. But Alicia knew the most important element wasn't on the screen. It was within her, the very voice they had mocked. She stood before the mirror, rehearsing her opening lines. Not to fix her accent, but to remind herself, this is the voice of truth, of someone who fought her way here. Marcus watched and nodded. Neither spoke another word. They both knew a storm awaited them, but this time, Alicia would be the storm. The headquarters of Stonebridge Capital gleamed in the crisp morning air. Its towering glass walls reflected the golden sun, flaunting the wealth and power of those inside. Outside, luxury cars lined up, delivering Wall Street's most powerful players to the doors. Alicia and Marcus arrived soon after. Stepping out of the car, Alicia drew in a deep breath, her heels striking confidently against the marble floor of the grand lobby. Dozens of eyes turned toward her, curious, doubtful, and tinged with disdain. An attendant led them into the main boardroom. It felt more like an arena than a meeting space, a long oak table, polished black leather chairs, investors lined up like judges, their gazes sharp as blades. At the far wall, the golden Stonebridge emblem glistened like a reminder. Here, money is absolute power. Marcus leaned in and whispered, "Get ready, Alicia." "They're going to try to crush us," Alicia didn't answer. She simply smirked, pulled out her chair, and sat squarely at the center, facing dozens of eyes waiting to evaluate her. And to judge her, the silence was heavy, suffocating. Then a deep voice rose from the far end of the table. "Ms. Johnson, we hear you have a story to convince us." "Let's hear it." Alicia lifted her head, her eyes burning with resolve. This was the moment she had prepared for all night. Alicia rose from her chair and stepped toward the presentation screen. The white lights illuminated her face, sharpening every feature. She took a deep breath, then began, her voice echoing clear and unashamed. The very voice that so many had mocked. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity today. I know, before you even look at a single number, you probably hear my voice and wonder, is this woman really fit to lead a global company?" A few investors exchanged glances, smirks tugging at their lips. Alicia met their eyes head-on, refusing to look away. "My answer is this. This voice is proof. It tells the story of where I come from, the barriers I've overcome, and the resilience that cannot be broken. And if I can rise from there to here, then this company can rise from its humble beginnings to become a global brand." Marcus switched on the slides. Growth charts lit up, alongside images of international partners. The energy in the room began to shift. Faces once indifferent now raised their brows in surprise. Alicia pressed on, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You don't have to believe in me right now, but you will not be able to ignore the evidence I'm about to show you." The boardroom fell into silence. This time, not a single laugh was heard. Right after Alicia's confident opening, the cold voice of an older investor rang out. His silver hair was neatly combed, his tone sharp. "Numbers sound nice, but the tech market is ruthless. How can you guarantee that your small company won't be swallowed whole by global giants overnight?" Several faces nodded slightly, as if agreeing with the challenge. All eyes turned to Alicia again, waiting for a stumble. But Alicia only smirked, her hands steady on the table. "Good question. And here's the difference. Giants move slowly, bound by their own heavy systems. We, on the other hand, are fast, adaptable, and we've already proven it. Marcus switched to the next slide. A short video played, showing Alicia's team deploying their product in 3 countries in under 6 weeks. Real-time data appeared on screen, revealing user growth far beyond projections. Alicia locked eyes with the investor who had spoken, her voice low but razor-sharp. We don't intend to avoid the giants. We intend to outrun them, with speed and agility they'll never possess. The room went quiet for a moment. Some of the investors who had doubted her earlier now sat straighter, their expressions shifting from contempt to concentration. Alicia knew her words were beginning to turn the tide. A sharp tapping of a pen echoed from the far end of the table, where a man sat, infamous for never believing in rising CEOs. He rested his chin on his hand, eyes cold and piercing into Alicia. "Ms. Johnson, I've heard countless promises, and most of them fail. Tell me plainly what makes you think you are any different?" The question cut like a knife, the whole room watching, waiting for Alicia to falter. But Alicia didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her voice rising, not defensive, but defiant. "What makes me different is right here, right now. You laughed at my voice, doubted my roots, dismissed my path. Yet here I am, standing before you not with promises, but with proof." Marcus clicked to the final slide. The number 2,000,000,000 lit up the screen. Projected value of the deal under negotiation. Poised to cross the $2 billion mark. Alicia paused, sweeping her gaze across the room. "You ask what makes me different? This is the answer. I don't just dream. I deliver. And once I commit, I do not back down." Silence flooded the boardroom. Then, unexpectedly, a few claps broke out from the corner. Faces that had once been stone cold now nodded faintly, eyes glinting with curiosity, and the beginnings of respect. The first battle in this boardroom was won. But Alicia knew this was only the opening act of a history-making deal. 3 days later, Alicia received the official call from Stonebridge. She was invited into negotiations. This was no longer a pitch. It was a real battle, where every number and every clause could decide the fate of her company. In a closed boardroom, the air was thick. 12 investors sat across from her, each with a heavy dossier in front of them. Alicia sat on the other side, flanked only by Marcus and a legal advisor. One of the largest investors spoke first, his tone half-warning. "We don't want to waste time. If this deal is going to happen, you'll have to prove your company can not only survive, but dominate the market." Alicia didn't blink. Calmly she replied, "Then you will have that proof." Not in empty words, but in a detailed plan. She placed a binder on the table and opened it. Inside was a 24-month international expansion roadmap, every target market, every financial milestone, and even pre-calculated risk strategies. Marcus followed up, his voice firm. "We don't promise with dreams. We commit with roadmaps. And this roadmap, once launched, cannot be stopped." The room fell into heavy silence. But this time, Alicia could feel it clearly. The momentum was shifting to her side. A younger investor, wearing silver-rimmed glasses, flipped through the pages rapidly before speaking with a sharp tone. "Here. You wrote that your company plans to expand into Asian markets within 18 months. But how can you compete with tech giants already deeply rooted there? That's like throwing pebbles at a mountain." A few scoffs rippled across the room. Alicia remained calm, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. "Yes, if we follow their path, it would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. But we're not following the old path. We're targeting the segment they've ignored." She pointed to the chart on the screen. While the big players fight over premium urban markets, more than 60% of the population in rural areas and Tier 2 cities remain underserved. That is where we'll begin. And once they become loyal customers, even the giants will struggle to pull them away. Marcus added, his voice slow but weighty. "We're not trying to beat them on their field. We're creating a new field." The room fell silent. The mocking laughs faded, replaced by eyes now calculating, considering. Alicia knew she had just scored another critical move in this high-stakes game. Just as the room seemed to lean toward Alicia, a gravelly voice broke the air. It was Richard Hale, The veteran investor known as the CEO, Gravedigger. He was infamous for asking dagger-like questions that had made countless executives stammer at the negotiation table. He tapped his pen lightly against the table, eyes drilling into her. Ms. Johnson, suppose the market crashes tomorrow and capital dries up. What will you do to keep your company alive? And don't give me generic answers. I want a concrete plan. Right here, right now. The tension snapped tight. Marcus stiffened, glancing at Alicia. This was the kind of direct strike designed to expose weakness. But Alicia didn't flinch. She pulled up another file on her laptop and projected it on the screen. This is our crisis scenario plan. If the market collapses, we immediately pivot to our low-cost product line, already tested and proven profitable. At the same time, we cut 30% of operating expenses through automation. She paused, locking eyes with Hale. My company doesn't survive on hope. We survive on preparing for the worst and turning it into opportunity. The boardroom went dead silent. Even Richard Hale leaned back in his chair, the corner of his lips curling into a faint smile. Not one of mockery, but the rare flicker of respect. Just as Alicia finished presenting her crisis scenario plan, the boardroom doors swung open. A middle-aged woman strode in with brisk confidence, a face many in the room recognized. It was Evelyn Carter, a senior executive from a major European tech conglomerate and one of Alicia's largest international clients. A murmur rippled through the room. Evelyn placed a binder on the table and spoke clearly, her voice ringing with authority. Apologies for being late. But before you make any decisions, I want to add a perspective. Our company has partnered with Alicia Johnson for the past 8 months. And the result? Our market revenue grew by 27% solely from deploying her product. A wave of whispers swept across the investors. One frowned and asked, Ms. Carter, are you confirming this? Evelyn smiled and nodded firmly. I'm not just confirming it. I'm committing to signing further contracts with her company. If you pass on this deal, the loss will be yours. Every eye in the room turned to Alicia. She remained composed, but inside, she knew. This was the unexpected piece that tipped the scales entirely in her favor. Chapter 4. Closed not with numbers or arguments, but with living proof, validation from the market itself. And Alicia understood. From this point on, the game had entered a whole new stage. Evelyn Carter's arrival struck the room like a thunderclap. The tension that had gripped the boardroom shifted instantly. The once stern faces of investors began to soften, some scribbling notes in haste, others trading calculating glances. Alicia remained seated, fingers interlaced, her sharp eyes sweeping across the room. She knew that in this moment she was no longer the one asking for capital. The investors were now the ones scrambling not to miss out. One investor, calm and measured, was the first to speak. Ms. Johnson, if the figures Ms. Carter presented are accurate, then clearly your company has potential beyond expectations. So tell us, what is it that you truly want from this deal? The question carried no contempt this time, only recognition. Alicia leaned back slightly, her confident smile unwavering. What I want is simple. I'm not looking for those who laugh at me. I'm looking for partners who dare to believe in me, right now, before the rest of the world realizes the value of this company. In that instant, the roles reversed completely. Those who once mocked her voice were now the ones scrambling not to be left behind. The atmosphere in the boardroom shifted dramatically. Gone were the skeptical stares, replaced now by hunger and calculation. A young investor, known as the Unicorn Hunter, was the first to jump in. I propose $200 million for 20% equity. With that capital, your company could expand into Asia faster than projected. Before his words even settled, another investor cut in, his tone edged with urgency. We'll put in $250 million for 18%. In return, my firm gets exclusive distribution rights in Europe. The room buzzed, like a secret auction unfolding. Those who had been silent now leaned in, whispering to their aides, eyes flicking toward Alicia. Marcus leaned close and whispered, See? They're starting to fight each other. Now we're the ones holding the power. Alicia's lips curved into a faint smile. She didn't rush to answer any of the offers. Instead, she slowly scanned the room, her gaze making even the billionaires feel as if they were the ones being evaluated. "Thank you for the offers," Alicia said calmly. "But I'm not looking for a quick deal. I'm looking for the right deal." The room hushed instantly. Her words now carried the weight of someone in complete command of the table. The room buzzed with heated offers until suddenly Richard Hale, the CEO gravedigger, spoke. He had been silent all this time, his eyes razor-sharp, dissecting every move. His gravelly voice rolled out slowly, heavy with authority. "I have an offer. $500 million for 35% equity. In return, I'll take a seat on your board to help you run the company." The room fell silent. It was massive, a staggering offer that made some investors suck in a breath. But beneath it, everyone understood. 35% equity plus a board seat meant Alicia would be forced to share or even lose control. Marcus frowned, whispering under his breath, "This is a trap. If we take it, we'll no longer be our own." Alicia stayed perfectly composed, unshaken. She looked straight at Hale, the faintest smirk on her lips. "Mr. Hale, I respect your offer, but I don't need anyone to help me run my company. I didn't build this business to hand over control. I built it to prove that I and my team are capable of taking it all the way." A murmur swept through the room. Some investors nodded, clearly impressed by Alicia's resolute stance. Hale narrowed his eyes, a faint smile tugging at his stern face. He said nothing, but his look made it clear. "You may have dodged a knife, but the real battle has only begun." After Alicia rejected Richard Hale's offer, the room once again fell into tense silence. No one dared to speak immediately. A few investors cleared their throats, others buried their faces in papers to mask their unease. Then Alicia stood. She was no longer the one pitching. She was a commander on the battlefield. Her voice rang out, every word sharp and ablaze. "I know you're weighing your options. But understand this, my company is not begging for survival. We are on the edge of expansion, at a speed this market has never seen. And I'm not looking for a safety net. I'm looking for partners brave enough to walk alongside us." She paced slowly around the table, her gaze piercing each investor. "This isn't just an investment. This is your chance to be part of a deal that will make history, a deal people will look back on years from now and ask, who had the courage to believe first?" Marcus switched to the final slide, a world map with bold red arrows stretching from the US to Europe, Asia, and Africa. At the bottom, projected valuation, $10 billion in 5 years. The room held its breath. And then this time, not one, but several investors spoke at once. Voices urgent, "We want in. My firm will commit $300 million. We'll offer $400 million for less than 15% equity." Alicia sat back down, a calm smile playing on her lips. Inside, she knew. The power struggle was over. From being mocked for her voice, she had become the one billionaires now fought to stand beside. After the flood of offers, the boardroom had turned into a shadowy auction. But Alicia didn't allow the chaos to last. She raised her hand, her voice calm yet cutting. "Thank you for all the proposals, but remember, I'm not here to sell off the future of my company cheap. I'm here to choose the right partners." The room instantly quieted. Every eye fixed on her, curiosity and unease mixed in their gaze. Alicia opened a fresh binder, the sound of each page turning echoing through the silence. "These are my conditions. First, I will not accept any offer demanding more than 20% equity. Second, any partner joining must commit to supporting international expansion, not just with money, but with real networks and connections." A few investors frowned. One even opened his mouth to protest, but Alicia's unwavering stare silenced him. She paused briefly, then continued with firm conviction. "And finally, I don't need people who only want a seat at the table to control me. I need those who truly believe in our vision. If you think you lack the patience or the faith, then this is not the deal for you." Marcus, seated beside her, looked at Alicia with pride. The room sank into heavy silence, not of scorn this time, but of recognition that Alicia Johnson had just set the rules of the game herself. Alicia's declaration shook the room. A few investors, long accustomed to dictating terms, scowled. One man on the right slammed his pen on the table and snapped, "We're not used to some young CEO laying down the rules." With that, he stood, gathered his papers, and stormed out. A few others exchanged whispers, shook their heads, and followed him out the door. But those who remained, the investors with true grit, the ones who recognized real potential, sat still. No one spoke, their eyes fixed on Alicia as if evaluating her as an equal partner, not someone begging for capital. From the corner, Evelyn Carter smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming with approval. She could see the shift clearly. Alicia wasn't just pitching anymore, she was running the table. Finally, a salt-and-pepper-haired investor broke the silence, his voice calm yet firm. "Ms. Johnson, I respect your candor. I'm ready to invest $200 million for 15% equity, and I'll commit to opening our entire distribution network in Africa, where my firm holds dominance." Marcus quickly jotted it down, his eyes alight. Alicia nodded slightly, a composed smile spreading across her face. "That's exactly what I'm looking for. Not just money, but belief and vision." The room stayed silent, but the energy had shifted. Alicia was no longer the one being judged. She was the one doing the choosing. Right after the bold offer from the salt-and-pepper-haired investor, the room heated up again. Another investor, tall, lean, with gold-rimmed glasses and a reputation as an opportunity snatcher, tapped his fingers on the table. His voice brimming with ambition. "I don't want to sit on the sidelines. I'll put in $300 million for 18% equity. But more importantly, my firm will integrate your product into our entire payment ecosystem across Asia. If you want explosive growth, this is the fastest highway." A wave of murmurs swept through the room. This was more than money, it was access to a massive market. Even Marcus leaned forward slightly, his eyes flashing with excitement, but Alicia remained still, her gaze calm. She listened, then replied slowly, $300 million for 18% is not a bad offer. But remember, I don't choose people just because they promise me the fastest road. I choose people willing to walk with me, even when the road isn't smooth. Her words silenced the room for a few beats. The gold-rimmed investor blinked, then smiled faintly. "Clearly, you're not easily bought. I like that. Let's discuss this further after the session." Marcus leaned closer, whispering, "They're starting to see you as the one holding the reins?" "Alicia." She only nodded slightly, her eyes gleaming with resolve. Deep down, she knew, the more offers poured in, the greater her leverage became. And this time, she alone would decide who entered the gates of the billion-dollar deal. After the major offers had been laid out, the boardroom no longer felt like a negotiation. It felt like an arena, with investors fiercely competing for a seat beside Alicia. She rose and walked slowly to the screen, her gaze sweeping the room. Her voice rang out, each word sharp and resonant. "You asked me what makes me different. Here's the answer. I'm not just offering an investment opportunity, I'm offering a choice. And today, the one making that choice is me, not you." Marcus pulled up the final slide. 3 bold blocks appeared on the screen. Labeled Trust, Vision, Commitment. Alicia pressed on, her tone commanding, "I will only choose 3 partners. 3 who are willing to build this future with me. If you truly want in, tell me why I should choose you, not just with money, but with commitment and belief." The room erupted in murmurs. Investors who were used to dictating terms now found themselves scrambling to prove their worth. Some even rose to their feet, touting their networks, their experience, their long-term pledges. Marcus glanced at Alicia, his eyes blazing with pride. He whispered, "You did it! They're not mocking your voice anymore. They're begging to be heard by it." Alicia smiled calmly and took her seat again. In that moment, every eye in the room was fixed on her, not with doubt, but with respect. Chapter 6 closed with Alicia holding complete power over the negotiation table. The next day, Alicia called a private session, inviting only the investors who had stayed, the ones willing to play by her rules. Gone were the smirks and mockery. The room now carried the weight of a solemn trial, like an elite selection process. Alicia began, her voice low yet commanding. "You've spoken plenty about money, networks, and experience. But I don't need empty promises. I need proof. So today, I'm setting a challenge. The room stirred. An older investor frowned. A challenge? Alicia met his gaze, unwavering. Each of you will show me, within 7 days, what concrete opportunity you can create for my company. A contract, a partner, or a new market entry. I don't choose based on words. I choose based on action. Marcus leaned toward her, whispering, "You just turned the negotiation into a competition. And the prize is the billion-dollar deal." A heavy silence settled over the room. Investors who were used to giving orders now found themselves in the position of having to prove their worth. Alicia sat tall, her fingers interlaced, a faint smile playing at her lips. She knew this moment marked the complete reversal. From being mocked for her voice, she had become the one holding the power to decide the fate of the entire game. The room was tense, like a courtroom. Investors who were used to dictating terms were now forced to prove their worth. Alicia sat at the center, calm as a judge, watching every move. The first to rise was the salt-and-pepper-haired investor, the one who had offered $200 million for 15% equity earlier. He opened a folder, his voice steady and firm. "In my African network, we control distribution across more than 10 countries. Here is a preliminary contract with 3 major telecom companies in Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. If you agree, your product could reach over 50 million subscribers within 6 months." Marcus's eyes widened in surprise, unable to hide his admiration. Alicia nodded slightly, a faint smile on her lips. "This is exactly the kind of action I want to see." Next, the gold-rimmed investor, the one who promised to open doors in Asia, stood. With a snap of his fingers, his aide projected a draft partnership with a global payment conglomerate. "We've already lined up an alliance with electronic payment systems across 12 Asian countries. If you choose us, your company will immediately be connected to hundreds of millions of users." The room buzzed. These weren't empty promises anymore. They were concrete strategies. Alicia kept her composure. But inside she knew. The trump cards were being laid on the table, and she alone held the power to decide who would stand beside her in this billion-dollar deal. The boardroom was ablaze with trump cards being played, but a few investors still sat silent. Alicia knew they hadn't shown their full hand yet. A stout middle-aged man, known as a health tech baron, rose slowly. He set a thick binder on the table. "We control the largest private hospital chain in Europe. This is a memorandum of understanding. If your company agrees, your product will become the technology backbone for managing patient data across more than 300 hospitals." Marcus turned to Alicia, whispering in awe, "That's an entirely new market." Alicia nodded slightly, her eyes glinting with excitement. Then, a young woman with jet-black hair, representing a Silicon Valley venture capital firm, stepped forward. She placed a short document on the table, but her voice was confident and sharp. "I don't bring a massive international network like they do. What I bring is a team of strategists who've turned 3 startups from obscurity into unicorns in under 3 years. If Alicia wants speed, we are the engine." The room erupted again. This time, not just about money or networks, but elite human capital. Alicia leaned back in her chair, her gaze sweeping across the room. Inside, she thought, they once mocked my voice. Now they're fighting to prove their worth, and the power to decide rests entirely in my hands. When all the trump cards had been laid on the table, the boardroom sank into tense silence. Every eye was fixed on Alicia, the woman who, just weeks earlier, had been mocked for her voice, now holding the fate of the entire game. Alicia stood, placing both hands lightly on the table. Her voice rang out, slow yet commanding. "Thank you for all the offers. You've shown me incredible opportunities, but as I said, I will choose only 3 partners, which means some of you will have to leave this game." The air froze. A few investors leaned back in their chairs, faces etched with disappointment and frustration. Alicia flipped through her binder, then pointed clearly. "First, I'm eliminating the offers that bring only money with no strategy. I don't need soulless capital. I need partners willing to fight alongside me. A young investor, The one who had offered $200 million with no commitments. Flushed red before quietly packing his papers, Alicia continued, her gaze sharp. Next, I'm eliminating anyone who seeks to control my company. I didn't build this to hand over power. If you cannot trust my team, then we have nothing to discuss. Her words darkened a few faces, but the remaining investors, the ones with real vision, nodded, their eyes gleaming with respect. Finally, Alicia closed the binder and smiled faintly. The shortlist will be announced tomorrow. And when it is, the three chosen won't just be partners, they'll be part of history. The boardroom was silent, save for the pounding hearts of those awaiting her verdict. Chapter 7. Closed in suffocating suspense, Alicia had flipped the scales. From being mocked to being the judge, from dismissed target to arbiter of a billion-dollar deal. The next day, the grand hall of a Manhattan hotel was packed. Journalists, media outlets, and top business leaders filled the room. Everyone knew. Today, Alicia Johnson would reveal the shortlist, the three final partners chosen for the billion-dollar deal. Alicia stepped onto the stage in a sleek navy suit. She was no longer the woman mocked for her accent, but the center of the business world's attention. Camera flashes burst in rapid fire, reporters jostled for position, and the event was streamed live to audiences worldwide. She began with a confident smile. Thank you all for being here today. This story began with laughter at my expense, but today it ends with choice. The room fell silent, hanging on her every word. Alicia raised a binder, her voice carrying with authority. After careful consideration, I am announcing the three final partners. The air froze. Investors who had competed for her attention now felt their hearts race, while the audience held its breath. Marcus, watching from below, knew this moment would not only decide the company's future, but cement Alicia's place in history. Alicia paused deliberately, letting the suspense build to its peak. Before preparing to read the chosen names, the room was silent, every eye locked on Alicia. She drew a deep breath and spoke with clarity. The first partner, the African Distribution Group. A murmur rippled through the hall. The salt and pepper investor smiled, nodding with pride. With his telecom network reaching tens of millions of customers, Alicia had secured her gateway to the global stage. She turned a page and continued. The second partner, the Asian Payment Alliance. The hall erupted. The gold-rimmed investor rose and shook Alicia's hand right there on stage. This partnership meant her company would gain access to hundreds of millions of users within months. Alicia smiled, her eyes gleaming. Then she lowered her voice, heightening the suspense. And the third partner? The tension was suffocating. Remaining investors held their breath, waiting. Alicia let a small smile cross her lips, her voice ringing out. The Silicon Valley Venture Capital Fund. Thunderous applause filled the hall. The young female investor, who had promised an elite team of strategists, sprang to her feet, her joy uncontainable. 3 names, 3 perfect pieces: distribution network, payment system, growth engine. Alicia hadn't chosen just those with money. She had chosen those who could turn her company into a global force. From the audience, Marcus's eyes shimmered. In his heart, he whispered, Alicia didn't just close a deal. She rewrote history. The applause had barely faded when staff carried out 3 thick contracts, laying them neatly on the signing table. Camera flashes blazed, reporters surged forward, desperate to capture this historic moment. Alicia stood between her 3 chosen partners, her smile calm but her eyes blazing like fire. She picked up the pen, skimmed through the pages, and signed with resolute strokes. Each signature etched a new milestone in her company's history. The salt and pepper investor signed next, his gravelly voice tinged with emotion. You've just opened an entire continent. The gold-rimmed investor pressed his signature and grinned. Now, let's conquer Asia together. The young venture capitalist from Silicon Valley clasped Alicia's hand firmly after signing. Together, we'll accelerate like never before. When the final signature was inked, the hall erupted with cheers as cameras whirred. On the giant screen behind them, bold letters flashed. $2 billion deal officially closed. Marcus stood at the corner of the room, his heart racing. He smiled, whispering to himself, from a voice once mocked, to a CEO the world now bows to. Alicia, you did it. As the signing ceremony concluded, the lights in the grand hall dimmed. Alicia stepped out onto the balcony of the Manhattan Hotel, the night wind tousling her hair as New York sparkled below like an endless sea of stars. She closed her eyes, remembering that first day, the day she was mocked in a boardroom simply for her Southern accent. The laughter that once threatened to crush her had instead become the quiet fire that carried her to the top. Marcus joined her, handing her a glass of champagne. Gazing at the city lights, he said softly, "You know, no one will remember the way they mocked your voice. What they'll remember is that you closed a $2 billion deal and redefined what it means to be underestimated." Alicia took a sip, her eyes blazing, her voice warm yet proud. Exactly. They may have laughed at my accent, but in the end, this voice brought me victory. And this is only the beginning. Behind her, the massive LED screen still glowed with the words, "They mocked her accent. She closed a $2 billion deal." The story ended not just with the triumph of a Black woman CEO, but with a message that echoed far beyond. Believe in yourself, even when the world doesn't, because one day, the laughter will turn into applause for you.